How did one joke at a Thanksgiving table quietly destroy my son's future? I didn't raise my voice when my daughter-in-law mocked my hearing aid and my son brushed it off as nothing. I left early, and by the next morning, every system they depended on had already turned against them. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. The dining room was too loud. 17 people crammed around a table meant for 12, voices layered over each other, silverware scraping plates, someone's kid banging a spoon against a glass. The kind of noise that turns into static when you're 61 and your hearing isn't what it used to be. I reached up and adjusted the device behind my right ear. Just a small movement. The volume dial clicked down half a notch, filtering out some of the chaos. "Oh my God, Drew, are you seriously messing with that thing again?" Maribel's voice cut through the room like a fire alarm. My daughter-in-law had that kind of volume, the type that didn't ask for attention, it demanded it. She was sitting 3 seats down from me, wine glass in hand, that smile on her face that never quite reached her eyes. I looked at her, said nothing. "It's like having a grandfather clock at the table," she continued, louder now, playing to the room. "Tick, tick, tick. Except it's beep, beep, beep. Can't we have one meal without the sound effects?" A few people laughed. Not everyone, but enough. My granddaughter, Nina, sitting across from me, wasn't laughing. She was watching me with those careful eyes. 28 now, quiet and observant. Her fork was frozen halfway to her mouth. "It's fine," I said. My voice came out level, calm. Just adjusting the volume. "Well, maybe if you didn't need it turned up so high, we could all have a conversation without broadcasting to the neighborhood," Maribel said. "I mean, seriously, Drew, it's like eating next to a radio tower." More laughter. Scattered, uncomfortable, but still there. I looked down the table at Lucas, my son. 34 years old, wearing the kind of button-down shirt that cost more than my first car payment. He was cutting his turkey with surgical precision, eyes fixed on his plate. "Lucas," I said. He glanced up, met my eyes for maybe half a second, then looked at Maribel, then back at his plate. "Dad, it's fine. She's just joking." "I know what she's doing." "Come on, don't make it a thing." That's when I understood. Lucas wasn't going to say anything. He never said anything. Not when Maribel called me old-timer at his birthday party. Not when she suggested I should maybe think about assisted living while I was standing right there in their kitchen. Not when she forwarded that article about memory care facilities to the family group chat. He chose her every time. But choices have architecture. They have foundations and load-bearing walls that determine whether they stand or collapse. And I had built some of that architecture. I set my fork down, folded my napkin, pushed my chair back slowly, the legs scraping against hardwood. "Where are you going?" Maribel asked. "We haven't even done dessert yet." "I'm heading out." "Oh, come on, Drew. Don't be sensitive." Sensitive. That word again. The one people use when they want you to accept disrespect quietly. "I'm not," I said. "I'm just tired." "You're always tired lately," Maribel said. "Maybe you should get that checked out too, along with the hearing." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Nina set down her fork entirely. "Dad, you don't have to leave." "Yeah, I do." I walked past the sideboard, past the other relatives who suddenly found their plates fascinating, past Nina, who gave me the smallest nod. No one else said anything. The conversations resumed before I'd even left the room. The front door closed behind me with a soft click. The November air hit my face, cold and clean. I could hear the muffled sounds of the dinner continuing inside, laughter already resuming, the moment already forgotten by everyone except me and Nina. I got in my car, sat there for a minute in the dark driveway, engine off. The hearing aid was still on, picking up the faint rustle of wind through the oak tree overhead, the distant sound of someone's television, a dog barking 3 houses away. I took out my phone. The screen glowed blue in the darkness. I opened my messages, found Lucas's name, and typed a single sentence. "Lucas, I'm proud of everything you've accomplished. I hope it was worth it." I stared at it for a moment, making sure the words said exactly what I meant. Then I hit send. The message showed as delivered immediately. Then, a few seconds later, as read. I waited to see if he would respond right away. He didn't. I started the car and drove home. The house was quiet when I got back. The good kind of quiet, the kind you choose rather than the kind that's imposed on you. I made coffee even though it was almost 8 at night. Old habit. When you work in nuclear safety systems for 30 years, you learn to stay awake when you need to think, to keep your mind sharp during the long hours when everyone else has gone home but the work still needs to be done. I sat at the kitchen table with my mug and my phone and let the evening replay in my head. Not with anger. Anger's a young man's tool. It burns hot and fast and leaves you with nothing but ash and regret and a lot of wasted energy that could have been directed towards something more useful. What I felt was different, clearer, more focused. I thought about the first time Maribel made a comment about my hearing. 2 years ago, maybe 3. The timeline was a little fuzzy, but the moment itself was crystal clear. Lucas had just gotten his promotion to operations manager at Meridian Energy Consultancy, a mid-sized firm that specialized in compliance oversight for regional power systems. They'd invited me over for dinner to celebrate, steaks on the grill, expensive wine, the works. I'd asked Lucas to repeat something. I hadn't quite caught what he'd said over the sound of the deck fan, and Maribel had laughed and said, "You might want to get that checked, Drew. We can't have you missing important conversations." She'd said it with a smile, her hand on Lucas's shoulder, and he'd smiled too, a little uncomfortably, but he'd smiled. It was phrased like concern. That's how it always starts. Concern that sounds genuine until you realize it's really just criticism wearing a mask. Then there was the birthday party, Lucas's 33rd. Maribel had invited what seemed like half the city, colleagues, friends, people from her networking groups. I'd shown up with a card and a gift, planning to stay for an hour and then head home. But Maribel had grabbed my arm as soon as I walked in and dragged me around the room, introducing me to people. "This is Lucas's dad," she'd said, over and over, with slight variations. "He used to work at the power plant before. You know, everything started shutting down. He's retired now. Very retired. Very retired, like I was some relic from a museum, dusty and obsolete and suitable only for occasional viewing. Lucas had been standing right there during most of these introductions. He'd smiled, nodded, changed the subject when it got too uncomfortable, moved the conversation somewhere safer, somewhere that didn't require him to choose between his wife and his father. That's the thing about Lucas. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't even indifferent, not really. He was just conflict avoidant to his core. If saying nothing kept the peace, he said nothing. If agreeing with Maribel made dinner easier, he agreed with Maribel. If letting me be quietly diminished meant avoiding an argument, then that's what happened. And over time, that silence had built something. Not a wall, exactly. More like a foundation, one where my relevance decreased a little bit every day, so gradually that no one even noticed it was happening. Except I noticed. I always noticed. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug in the sink, dried it, put it back in the cabinet. Walked down the hallway to my office, my footsteps echoing slightly in the empty house. I don't use the room much anymore. It's mostly just storage now. Old files, boxes of technical manuals I kept meaning to donate but never got around to, framed certifications from jobs that don't matter to anyone except me. 30 years of career accomplishments reduced to decorations on a wall that nobody ever sees. But in the back corner, behind a stack of binders thick with dust, there's a filing cabinet. Gray metal, 4 drawers, locked. I haven't opened it in almost 3 years. Haven't needed to. I knelt down on the floor, pulled out my keys, and unlocked the bottom drawer. The mechanism was stiff from disuse, and it took a bit of effort to get it open. Inside were folders. Neat, labeled, organized the way I organized everything when I still worked. Each one marked with dates, project codes, contract numbers. Most of them were obsolete now, just paperwork from projects that had been completed or archived years ago. Documentation that no one would ever need again, but that I'd kept anyway. Because that's what you do when you work in systems where every decision has to be traceable. But not all of them were obsolete. I pulled out the folder marked Trust Meridian Infrastructure Guarantee 2018. Sat down at my desk. The chair creaked under my weight. I needed to oil it. Opened the folder carefully, as if the contents might evaporate if I moved too quickly. The documents inside were dense, the kind of legal language that takes 3 readings to parse, and even then, you're not entirely sure you've understood it correctly. But I'd read them before. Multiple times. I'd signed them. I knew what they said, line by line, clause by clause. Back in 2018, Lucas had been newly hired at Meridian. The company was small then, still building its reputation in the energy sector, still trying to establish itself as a credible player in an industry that valued track records and proven expertise above almost everything else. They specialized in compliance consulting for regional power systems, the kind of work that required someone with credibility, someone whose name carried weight in the industry, someone who could walk into a meeting and immediately establish trust. They'd asked Lucas if I would serve as a technical guarantor on a major contract. Nothing active, they'd assured him, just a formality. A signature that said if something went wrong, someone with actual expertise was standing behind the work, someone whose reputation would be on the line alongside theirs. I'd agreed, why wouldn't I? It was my son's career, his future, his chance to build something substantial in an industry I'd spent my entire adult life working in. But the trust structure wasn't just symbolic. I'd read the documents carefully before signing, the way I read everything. It was tied to performance clauses, compliance requirements, audit trails. If certain conditions weren't met, or if the guarantor withdrew support, the contract had provisions. Protections, consequences. I'd built systems my whole career. Nuclear safety doesn't allow for assumptions or shortcuts or good intentions. Every procedure has a backup. Every backup has documentation. Every decision leaves a trail that can be followed, examined, verified. This was the same principle, applied to a different context. I closed the folder, didn't put it away, left it on the desk where I could see it, where I would have to look at it every time I walked into the room. Then I picked up my phone and called Elaine Porter. She was the only attorney I trusted. We'd worked together during my final years in nuclear oversight when I was transitioning from active field work to more administrative roles. She'd been in regulatory compliance back then, before she moved into estate and trust law. She understood systems the way I understood systems, not as abstract concepts, but as architecture. Real structures with load-bearing elements and failure points and predictable responses to stress. The phone rang 3 times. "Drew Halden," she said when she answered. Not a question, just a statement. Her voice had that clipped precision I remembered from the compliance meetings we'd both sat through. "It's been a while." "It has." "Let me guess. You're calling about a trust document at 9:30 on Thanksgiving night because you're bored and wanted to chat about old times." "Not bored? Then what?" I looked at the folder on my desk. "I need to ask you something, hypothetically." "I don't do hypotheticals, Drew. You know that. If you want legal advice, ask a real question." "Fine, specifically. If someone served as a guarantor on a compliance contract 7 years ago, and that contract is still active, what happens if the guarantor formally withdraws their endorsement?" Silence. Then the sound of typing. "Which contract?" "Meridian Energy, infrastructure compliance, the one tied to regional oversight protocols." More silence. More typing. I could picture her at her desk, pulling up files on her computer, scanning through documents with the same methodical attention she brought to everything. "Hold on," she said. "I'm looking at the file." I waited. The hearing aid picked up the faint sound of her keyboard clicking, the soft hum of what might have been a printer or a computer fan. "Okay," she said finally. "I remember this one. You co-signed as a technical guarantor. Your credentials anchored their credibility with the oversight board. Without your name on it, they were just another small consulting firm trying to compete with established players." "That's right. And you're asking what happens if you withdraw?" "Yes." "Why would you do that?" "Does it matter?" Another pause, longer this time. "Drew, I've known you for a long time. You don't ask questions like this unless you've already decided what you're going to do, so let me ask differently. Has something changed that would justify withdrawal? Because this isn't something you can do casually. There are implications." I thought about the dining room, the laughter, the way Lucas looked away when I needed him to look at me, the years of small dismissals and quiet erasures that had led to this moment. "Yes," I said, "something's changed." "Then here's your answer. If you withdraw, Meridian loses primary guarantor standing on that contract. The oversight board would flag it for reevaluation. They'd want to know why the guarantor withdrew and whether the company can still meet the technical requirements without that endorsement. And then what? Depending on what they find, it could trigger a full compliance audit. If there are gaps, and Drew, there are always gaps, the company would have to remediate immediately or face penalties." "What kind of penalties?" "Depends on the gaps. Could be fines, could be contract suspension, could be worse if they've been operating outside acceptable margins. The board doesn't take these things lightly. One of the reasons they accepted your guarantee in the first place was because they knew you wouldn't sign off on anything questionable." "And Lucas?" "He's operations manager, right?" "Right. Then he's responsible for ensuring compliance. If the audit finds issues, he's the name on the documentation. It wouldn't just be the company's problem. It would be his problem, personally." I didn't say anything. Let the information settle. Let myself feel the weight of what I was considering. "Drew," Elaine said, her voice careful now, measured. "This isn't just paperwork. If you do this, you're not just pulling a signature. You're pulling a foundation. Everything built on top of it shifts, maybe collapses. You understand that, right?" "I know." "And you're sure this is what you want to do?" "I'm sure." She was quiet for a long moment. I could hear her breathing, could imagine her weighing the ethics of what I was asking, deciding whether to push back or accept my decision. "Okay," she said finally. If you want to proceed, I need you to come to my office tomorrow. We'll draft the formal withdrawal and submit it to the oversight board. Once it's filed, it's public record. There's no taking it back. No changing your mind a week later when things get difficult. That's fine. Drew, I have to ask, is this about something specific that happened, or is this... It's about respect, I said, cutting her off, or the lack of it. It's about watching someone you built a foundation for treat that foundation like it doesn't matter, like it never mattered. All right, she said. I understand. 10 a.m. My office. Bring any supporting documentation you want included. And Drew, think about this tonight. Really think about it. Make sure this is what you want. I've already thought about it. Think about it again. We hung up. I sat there at my desk, the folder open in front of me, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not satisfaction, not anger, not even anticipation, just clarity. The kind you get when you stop asking whether you should act and start asking how to act most effectively. My phone buzzed, a text from Lucas. Dad, I'm sorry about tonight. Maribel didn't mean anything by it. She's just like that sometimes. Let's talk this weekend. I read it twice, studied each word, each phrase, looking for something beyond the surface apology. Some recognition that this was bigger than one night, that this was about a pattern that had been building for years. I didn't find it. I set the phone down without responding. The hearing aid was still on. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the faint creak of the house settling as the temperature dropped outside, the distant sound of a car passing on the street, its engine fading into the night. Everything was very clear. Elaine's office was on the third floor of a building that used to be a bank back when banks still looked like banks. All marble and brass and architectural gravitas. High ceilings, old wood paneling, the kind of place that smelled like paper and furniture polish and money that had been there long enough to feel permanent. I got there at 9:50 and waited in the lobby until she came out to get me. You look calm, she said as we walked down the corridor to her office. Her heels clicked against the marble floor in a steady rhythm. I am? Most people aren't calm when they're about to blow up their kid's career. I'm not blowing it up. I'm removing support. There's a difference. She gave me a look but didn't argue, just pushed open the door to her office and gestured for me to enter. Her office was exactly what I expected. Neat, organized, ruthlessly efficient. 2 walls of bookshelves filled with legal texts and bound case files, all arranged in perfect order. A desk that was probably worth more than my car, made of some dark wood that gleamed in the morning light, and a window that looked out over the street below, where people were going about their normal Friday morning routines, completely unaware that 3 floors above them, someone's life was about to change. She gestured to a chair, and I sat. All right, she said, settling into her own chair and pulling a folder from a drawer. Let's go through this step by step. First, I need to confirm. The Meridian contract is still active? As far as I know. I checked this morning. It is. They've renewed it twice since the original signing. Lucas's name is on the renewal documents as primary operations contact. He's not just involved in this, he's central to it. His signature is on everything. Good. Drew, good is not the word most people use in this situation. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. Are you sure you're thinking clearly about this? I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. She opened the folder, pulled out a document, and slid it across the desk toward me. This is the withdrawal form. It states that you, as the original guarantor, are formally rescinding your endorsement due to... She paused, her finger hovering over a blank line. We need a reason. It has to be legitimate. You can't just say family dispute or my feelings were hurt. The oversight board needs something substantive. What qualifies as legitimate? Change in professional assessment, concern about compliance gaps, new information that alters your technical judgment, loss of confidence in operational oversight. Any of those work, as long as you can articulate why. I thought about it. Thought about Lucas, always choosing the easy path, always smoothing over problems instead of solving them. Thought about what that kind of approach meant in an industry where precision mattered. Concern about compliance practices, I said. Loss of confidence in current operational oversight. Have you observed actual compliance issues? Because if they ask, you need to be able to point to something concrete. I don't need to have observed specific violations. I'm removing my endorsement based on lack of confidence in the oversight structure. That's within my rights as guarantor. The contract language allows for withdrawal if the guarantor determines that conditions have changed in a way that affects their professional judgment. She looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, that works. I'll draft it that way. She started typing on her computer, her fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. This gets filed with the State Energy Oversight Board. Once it's submitted, they'll flag the contract for review. Meridian will be notified within 48 hours. After that, they have 30 days to either replace the guarantor or demonstrate that their compliance framework is solid enough to stand without one. And if they can't, then the contract gets suspended pending audit. During that time, they can't take on new projects, and existing projects get scrutinized. Everything gets examined: timelines, safety protocols, documentation, reporting practices. If the audit finds problems, Lucas gets blamed. Lucas is accountable, she corrected. There's a difference. If he's been doing his job correctly, maintaining proper oversight, ensuring that all the compliance requirements are met, then he'll be fine. The audit will clear him, and the only consequence will be some embarrassment and maybe some strained relationships. But if he hasn't, she trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. I thought about Lucas. Conflict avoidant, risk-averse. The kind of manager who'd rather smooth over problems than confront them head-on. The kind of person who'd sign off on things being good enough, rather than demanding they be exactly right. I thought about Maribel, ambitious and loud and pushy, encouraging him to take credit for things that weren't quite finished, to promise timelines that weren't quite realistic, to project confidence even when the foundation wasn't quite solid. He hasn't, I said quietly. Elaine stopped typing. You know that for sure? I know my son. I know how he operates. He takes shortcuts when he thinks no one will notice. He smooths over problems instead of fixing them. He tells people what they want to hear instead of what they need to hear. That worked fine when he had my name backing him up, when people assumed that if I was willing to guarantee his work, it must be solid. But without that safety net, it all comes down to whether the work can stand on its own, she finished. Right. She nodded slowly, then resumed typing. All right. Then you need to be prepared for this to get ugly. Maribel's going to push back hard. Lucas is going to call you, text you, maybe show up at your house. They're going to ask you to reverse it. They're going to pressure you. They might try to make you feel guilty. I won't reverse it, even if Lucas apologizes. He's had years to apologize, years to stand up for me, years to tell his wife that the way she treats me isn't acceptable. He didn't. One apology now, motivated by consequences rather than genuine remorse, isn't going to change that. She printed the document, checked it over once, then slid it across the desk with a pen. Sign here, end here, initial here. I read it through once, twice, made sure every word was exactly what I intended, that there was no ambiguity, no room for misinterpretation. The language was clear, formal, precise. It stated that I, Drew Halden, was formally withdrawing my endorsement as technical guarantor on the Meridian Energy Infrastructure Compliance Contract, effective immediately due to loss of confidence in current operational oversight practices. Then I signed. My handwriting was steady, no hesitation, no tremor. Elaine witnessed it, added her own signature, dated it, and slipped it into an envelope. I'll file this today. By Monday, the board will have it. By Tuesday at the latest, Meridian will know. By Wednesday, they'll be in full panic mode. Good. Drew. She leaned forward, her elbows on the desk, her expression serious. I've been doing this a long time. I've seen people use legal structures to settle scores. I've seen families torn apart over money and property and grudges. Most of them regret it eventually. The satisfaction fades, and what's left is just damage. Are you going to regret this? I thought about Thanksgiving dinner. The laughter. The way Lucas looked away when I needed him most. The years of erosion, of being made to feel like I didn't matter, like my opinions were outdated and my presence was inconvenient. No, I said. I won't regret this. Then we're done here. I left her office at 10:40. The morning was cold and bright. The kind of November day where everything feels sharp and clear. I stopped at a cafe on the way home and ordered coffee. Sat by the window and watched people walk past on the sidewalk below. Normal people having normal days, going to work, running errands, living their lives. None of them had just dismantled their son's career with a signature. My phone buzzed. Another text from Lucas. Dad, can we please talk? I don't understand why you're upset. Can you call me? I stared at it for a minute. Then I put the phone in my pocket and finished my coffee. By Monday, he'd understand perfectly. The weekend was quiet in the way that precedes something significant. I worked in the garage, organizing tools I'd been meaning to organize for months. Cleaned the gutters, which didn't really need cleaning but gave me something to do with my hands. Replaced a loose board on the back deck, even though it probably could have lasted another season. The kind of work that keeps your body busy and your mind clear, that lets you think without really thinking, that creates space for certainty to settle. Lucas called twice on Saturday. I didn't answer. Listened to the phone ring, watched his name appear on the screen, then waited for it to go to voicemail. He didn't leave messages either time. Maribel sent a message to the family group chat on Saturday afternoon. I had notifications turned on just to see what she'd say. Reminder, we're hosting the holiday party next month. Lucas just got amazing news about a big project at work. Can't wait to celebrate with everyone. Going to be our biggest party yet. Nina responded with a thumbs up emoji. A few other relatives added congratulations or party hat emojis. No one else said anything substantive. I turned off notifications and went back to the garage. Sunday was more of the same. Routine maintenance, small projects, the kind of day where you don't talk to anyone and don't feel the lack of conversation. I made dinner, nothing fancy, just chicken and vegetables, and ate it at the kitchen table while reading a book about early nuclear reactor design. Not because I needed to know about early reactor design, but because it was familiar territory, comforting in its precision. Monday morning, I was up at 6, made coffee, read the news, did the crossword puzzle in pen, the way I always did. At 9:15, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. Mr. Halden, this is Calvin Moore. I'm the compliance director at Meridian Energy Consultancy. I know who you are. We'd met once, maybe twice, at company events Lucas had invited me to. Calvin was in his mid-40s, bureaucratic, the kind of person who measured everything by procedures, protocols, and policies, and rarely strayed outside them. A pause. I could hear him breathing, could imagine him sitting in his office, probably with other people in the room, probably on speakerphone. Right. Well, I'm calling because we received a notification this morning from the State Energy Oversight Board. It says you've withdrawn your guarantor endorsement on our primary infrastructure contract. That's correct. Can I ask why? His voice was carefully controlled, professional, but I could hear the stress underneath it. It's in the filing. The filing says loss of confidence in current operational oversight. Mr. Halden, I need to understand what that means. We've been operating under your endorsement for 7 years. If there's an issue, if there's something specific that's caused concern, I need to know about it immediately so we can address it. Then I'd suggest you conduct an internal audit. Another pause, longer this time. I could hear muffled voices in the background, people conferring. Mr. Halden, with all due respect, this puts us in a very difficult position. The Oversight Board is already asking questions. They want documentation, explanations. If we can't resolve this quickly, it could impact our contract standing, our ability to take on new projects, our reputation in the industry. I'm aware of the implications. Is there anything we can do to address your concerns? Any documentation we can provide? Any meeting we can arrange? Any reassurances we can offer? No. Mr. Halden. His voice was starting to crack now, professionalism giving way to something more desperate. Please, Lucas is a valuable member of our team. We've built our operations around his management. If this triggers an audit, if it calls our compliance into question, the consequences will be severe, not just for the company, but for him personally. Then you should ensure your compliance practices are solid. Mr. Halden, I'm asking you, as a professional courtesy. Mr. Moore, I've made my decision. It's been filed. It's not personal, and it's not negotiable. If you have questions about your compliance framework, that's between you and the board. I hung up. The silence that followed felt substantial, final, like a door closing, a lock engaging, a bridge burning. 10 minutes later, Lucas called. I let it go to voicemail. He called again, then Maribel called. Then Lucas sent 5 texts in rapid succession. Dad, what is going on? Calvin just called me freaking out. Why would you pull your endorsement? This is going to trigger an audit. Please call me back right now. I turned off my phone and went for a walk. The neighborhood was quiet on a Monday morning. Most people at work, kids at school, the streets mostly empty except for the occasional car or dog walker. I walked the same route I'd walked 100 times before, maybe 1,000 times. Past the park where I used to take Lucas when he was small, where I'd push him on the swings and catch him at the bottom of the slide. Past the elementary school where he'd learned to read, where I'd volunteered in his classroom once a month. Past the corner store where I'd buy him candy on Fridays as a reward for a good week at school. I thought about those days sometimes. When Lucas was small and thought I knew everything, when he'd ask me questions about how things worked and I'd explain them patiently, carefully, making sure he understood not just the answer, but the process of finding answers. When he'd look at me like I'd built the world with my bare hands and could fix anything that broke. I don't know exactly when that stopped. when I became the inconvenience instead of the answer, the outdated relic instead of the trusted expert. Maybe it was gradual, so slow that neither of us noticed until it was already complete. Maybe it happened the first time Maribel implied I was past my prime and Lucas didn't correct her, didn't push back, just let the comment sit there in the air between us. Maybe it happened earlier, when he went away to college and came back speaking a different language, one where old meant irrelevant and experience meant obsolete. It didn't matter now. The transformation was complete, and I was done pretending it hadn't happened. I walked back home, turned on my phone, and watched the messages pile up like snow in a storm. Lucas, Maribel, Calvin Moore again, this time sending an email instead of calling. Someone from the oversight board requesting additional documentation. Another message from Maribel in the family group chat, this one less celebratory. Family emergency. Can everyone please call me ASAP? Nina texted me privately. Grandpa, are you okay? I responded, I'm fine. She wrote back immediately. Do you need anything? I can come over. No, thank you. Okay, I'm here if you change your mind. Tuesday morning, Elaine called. The board accepted the filing, she said without preamble. Meridian has been formally notified that they're under preliminary review. The audit is scheduled for next week. They're moving fast on this. That's faster than I expected. They flagged it as high priority. Apparently there have been other concerns about Meridian's practices. Nothing formal, nothing that rose to the level of investigation, but enough whispers and informal complaints that your withdrawal gave them a reason to look closer. You basically gave them permission to examine something they'd been wanting to examine anyway. Other concerns? Delayed reporting on a couple of projects. Incomplete documentation submitted for one of their larger contracts last year. A few projects that finished behind schedule without clear explanations. Nothing catastrophic on its own, nothing that screamed major violation, but enough to raise questions about their operational standards. I thought about Lucas, smoothing over problems instead of solving them, promising timelines he couldn't meet, telling clients what they wanted to hear instead of what was realistic. What happens next? The audit team will go through everything with a microscope. Contracts, timelines, compliance logs, safety protocols, internal communications. They'll interview staff, review documentation, compare what was promised against what was delivered. If they find gaps, and Drew, they're going to find gaps, Meridian will have to remediate immediately or face penalties. And Lucas? His name is on most of the documentation. He's the operations manager. If there are issues, he'll be asked to explain them in detail. And if he can't explain them satisfactorily, will he lose his job? Depends on what they find and how he handles it. If the gaps are minor and he can show he was trying to address them, he might survive with a reprimand. If the gaps are significant and he can't demonstrate due diligence, Meridian will probably fire him to show the board they're taking it seriously. Companies don't protect individuals when their institutional reputation is at stake. I understand. Drew, are you sure about this? There's still time to... I'm not reversing it. She sighed. Okay, I had to ask. I'll keep you updated as things develop. I thanked her and hung up. That afternoon, Lucas showed up at my house. I saw his car pull into the driveway from the kitchen window. He sat there for a long time, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3, before getting out. When he finally did, he looked like he hadn't slept. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes that aged him 10 years. He knocked on the door. Hard, urgent knocking that rattled the frame. I waited a few seconds, then opened it. Hey, Dad. Lucas. Can I come in? I stepped aside. He walked past me into the living room, hands in his pockets, shoulders tight, radiating tension like heat. You want coffee? I asked. No, I want to understand what the hell is happening. His voice was louder than necessary, stressed, fraying at the edges. I closed the door. You know what's happening. No, I don't. I get a call from my boss Monday morning saying you've pulled your endorsement and now we're under audit. The board is coming in next week to examine everything. Everything, Dad. 7 years of work. And I don't understand why. What did we do? What did I do? You didn't do anything, Lucas. That's the problem. He stared at me. What's that supposed to mean? It means I sat at your Thanksgiving table last week and listened to your wife mock me in front of 17 people, and you said nothing. You looked at your plate and you said nothing. Oh my God. This is about Maribel's joke? Are you serious right now? It's about the fact that you didn't see it as a problem, that you've never seen any of it as a problem. Dad, she was kidding. She makes jokes. That's who she is. She doesn't mean anything by it. Yes, she does, and you know she does. But it was easier to pretend she didn't than to tell her to stop. It was easier to let her treat me like I'm an inconvenience than to defend me. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from his childhood when he was frustrated and didn't know how to express it. Okay, fine. Maybe she was out of line. I'll talk to her. I'll make sure she apologizes. But this? You're going to tank my career over a joke at dinner? I'm not tanking your career. I'm withdrawing my support. There's a difference. It's the same thing. He was shouting now, his control completely gone. My entire position at Meridian was built on having you as a guarantor. That's what got me hired in the first place. That's what gave me credibility. Without that, I'm just another manager who graduated from a decent school and has some experience. Do you understand what you've done? Yes. I've stopped lending you something you weren't earning. I wasn't earning? He laughed, but there was no humor in it, just bitterness and disbelief. I've worked my butt off for 7 years. I've built a career. I've made a name for myself. You built a career on my name, and when someone disrespected that name in your home, you didn't say a word. You're my father. I know, and you're my son, which is why I expected you to defend me when someone treated me like garbage in your home, at your table, in front of your guests. Lucas sat down heavily on the couch, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, more defeated. This is insane. You're throwing away everything over one bad night. It wasn't one night, Lucas. It's been 2 years of this. 2 years of small comments and little jokes and you standing there letting it happen. 2 years of you choosing her comfort over my dignity every single time something came up. She's my wife, and I'm your father. But apparently one of those relationships mattered more than the other. He looked up at me, and for a second I saw something in his face that wasn't anger or defiance. Just exhaustion. Pure, complete exhaustion. What do you want me to do? Tell me. What will fix this? Nothing. It's already done. Can you undo it? Can you call the board and tell them it was a mistake? No. Why not? Because it wasn't a mistake. Dad, please. He was begging now, all pretense of pride gone. I'm asking you. I'll talk to Maribel. I'll make sure she apologizes. I don't want an apology, Lucas. It's too late for that. An apology now would just be words motivated by fear, not genuine understanding or remorse. He stood up abruptly. So that's it? You're just going to let me crash and burn, since watch my whole life fall apart? You're not going to crash and burn. You're going to deal with the consequences of your choices, just like I'm dealing with mine. He looked at me for a long time, his expression cycling through anger and disbelief and something that might have been betrayal. Then he walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the knob, and turned back. You know what? Fine. You want to do this? Do it. But don't pretend this is about respect or dignity or any of that. This is about control. You can't stand that I built something without you, so you're tearing it down. You can't stand that I have a life that doesn't revolve around you. If that's what you need to believe. It's what I know. He pulled open the door. Don't call me. Don't text me. We're done. He left. Didn't slam the door this time. Just closed it firmly, definitively, with a finality that seemed intentional. I stood there in the silence that followed, waiting to feel something. Regret, guilt, doubt. The normal human emotions that should accompany destroying your relationship with your only child. I didn't feel any of it. I felt clear, focused, certain. I felt like I'd finally done something that needed to be done. The audit started on Thursday. I wasn't involved. Didn't need to be, didn't want to be. The Oversight Board sent a team of 3 people to Meridian's offices and began the process of going through everything. Contracts, compliance logs, project timelines, safety documentation, internal communications, meeting notes. Everything that creates a paper trail when you're running a company that's supposed to be operating at the highest professional standards. Elaine called me that evening with an update. I was in the garage organizing my workbench when the phone rang. They're finding things, she said. What kind of things? Delayed reports, incomplete safety checks, a couple of projects that were signed off on before the final compliance reviews were actually completed, documentation that was backdated to make it look like processes were followed when they weren't, nothing catastrophic, nothing that put anyone in immediate danger, but enough to show a pattern of cutting corners. Lucas? His signature is on most of it. He's the one who approved the sign-offs. He's the one who told clients projects were complete when they weren't quite finished. He's the one who submitted reports to the board claiming full compliance when there were still outstanding items. I didn't say anything, just gripped the phone and stared at my workbench, at the tools arranged in precise order, at the evidence of systems properly maintained. Drew, there's something else. Maribel has been calling the board, multiple times, trying to claim this is a personal vendetta, That you're targeting Lucas out of spite because of some family disagreement? She's been aggressive about it, demanding they drop the audit, threatening to file complaints. Let her. They're not taking her seriously. She doesn't have standing in this, and frankly, she's making it worse by trying to interfere. But Lucas is going to be called in for a formal interview tomorrow. They're going to ask him to explain the gaps, to justify the decisions he made, to demonstrate that he was exercising proper oversight. Can he? I don't know. Can he? I thought about Lucas, about the way he'd always chosen the easy path, the comfortable answer, the solution that avoided conflict, even if it meant compromising on quality. Probably not. Then you need to prepare for the possibility that Meridian is going to make him the scapegoat. If they can pin the compliance issues on him, on his lack of oversight, his poor judgment, his failure to maintain standards, they save the company. They fire him, they issue a statement about taking responsibility seriously, and they move forward with new management. He's operations manager. He is responsible. Legally, yes. Ethically. She trailed off. Drew, I know what he did, or didn't do. I'm not arguing that. But he's still your son. This is still his life, his career, his future. Are you absolutely certain you're okay with how this is playing out? I thought about the question, really thought about it, examining my feelings with the same precision I'd brought to every important decision in my professional life. Was I okay with Lucas losing his job? With his reputation taking a major hit? With Maribel's carefully constructed image of their perfect life crumbling into something less polished? Yes, I was okay with it. More than okay. I thought it was necessary. He had years to make different choices, I said. Years to establish proper oversight, to build systems that actually worked, to say no when things weren't ready instead of saying yes because it was convenient. He chose shortcuts. Now he gets to live with what shortcuts cost. Elaine was quiet for a moment. All right, then let's talk about next steps, because there are some. The board is going to issue a preliminary finding next week. Based on what they're seeing, Meridian is going to face significant penalties, probably substantial fines, maybe a temporary contract suspension while they implement corrective measures. Lucas will almost certainly be terminated. What about the trust documents? The financial guarantees? What about them? Are they still active? The financial guarantees tied to your endorsement? Those terminated automatically the moment you withdrew. Meridian can't access them anymore. They can't use your credentials to secure new contracts. They can't trade on your reputation. That's all gone. Good. Drew, I need to go, Elaine. Thank you for keeping me updated. I hung up before she could say whatever she was planning to say. Some speech about family, probably, or consequences, or whether I'd thought this through completely. I had thought it through, more thoroughly than anything I'd thought through in years. That night, the family group chat exploded. I'd unmuted it earlier just to see what would happen, and what happened was predictable. Maribel. I can't believe what Drew is doing to this family. Lucas is being destroyed by a vindictive old man who can't handle a joke. If anyone cares about us at all, if anyone has any sense of family loyalty, you'll reach out to the oversight board and tell them this is personal, that this is elder abuse in reverse. Nina. I don't think that's fair to say. Maribel. Of course you'd defend him. You've always been his favorite. You've always taken his side, no matter what. Nina. That's not what I meant. I just think maybe we shouldn't be having this conversation in a group chat. Maribel. Lucas has worked his entire career to get where he is, and Drew is tearing it down because his feelings got hurt at Thanksgiving, because I made one joke about a hearing aid. Do you know how insane that is? Do you know what that says about his mental state? Someone else, Lucas's cousin, I think, chimed in. Maybe we should all just take a breath and let them work it out privately. This seems like something between Drew and Lucas. Maribel. There's nothing private about it. Drew filed a formal complaint with the State Energy Board. He made it public. He weaponized his professional standing to attack his own son. That's not private. That's abuse. I muted the chat again and set my phone down. The hearing aid was still on. I could hear the wind outside picking up, the creak of the house settling, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Everything was very, very clear, more clear than it had been in years. Friday morning, Lucas went in for his interview with the Oversight Board. I didn't hear from him directly, which I expected after what he'd said when he left my house. But at 3 that afternoon, Calvin Moore called again. Mr. Halden, this is Calvin Moore. I remember. The board has completed its preliminary audit. They've found serious compliance gaps and are recommending substantial penalties for Meridian. I see. Mr. Halden, I need to be direct. We're facing potential six-figure fines, possible contract suspension, and long-term reputational damage. And Lucas Halden, as operations manager, is being held personally accountable for these failures. As he should be. A pause. I could picture Calvin alone in his office, dealing with the consequences of what I'd set in motion. Is there any way to resolve this? He asked. Any conditions under which you'd reinstate your endorsement? No. Mr. Halden, I withdrew my endorsement because I no longer trust your company's practices. The audit confirmed my concerns. Fix your compliance issues, improve oversight, train your people. But don't ask me to co-sign work I don't believe in to save you from your own shortcuts. Lucas is going to lose his job, Calvin said. With his name in the findings, his career may not recover. You're destroying your own son's future. Then he'll find another field, or rebuild this one without borrowed credibility. That's his responsibility. This is your son. I know exactly who he is. I hung up. The silence afterward felt vast, like the aftermath of an explosion, when the sound is gone but the damage remains. That evening, Nina called, her voice careful. Grandpa? Hi, Nina. Are you okay? I'm fine. Lucas isn't. I know. She hesitated. He came by today after the interview. He's a mess. Maribel's furious. They may have to sell the house without his salary. That's not my responsibility. I'm not defending Maribel, Nina said. She's treated you badly for years. But this feels life-changing. It is. Do you think it's too much for what happened? I thought about years of quiet dismissals, about sitting at that Thanksgiving table while my name was mocked. No, I said. It's the right size. Lucas built his career on my reputation. When that name was disrespected in his home, he stayed silent. I'm taking it back. Nina was quiet. I just wanted to know you'd really thought this through. I have. Will you ever really talk to him again? Maybe, but not until he understands the pattern. Not just that dinner, but years of erasing me. That could take a while. Then it takes a while. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen, my hearing aid catching the soft sounds of evening. Piano music drifted from somewhere nearby. A car passed. A dog barked once, then stopped. Everything was exactly as it should be. The oversight board issued their findings on Monday morning. Elaine called me before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee. They're recommending a $75,000 fine and a 6-month contract suspension, she said. Meridian can appeal, but given the documentation the audit team found, it's not likely to change anything. The compliance gaps were too clear, too systematic. And Lucas? Terminated. Effective immediately. Friday afternoon, right after his interview. He couldn't explain the discrepancies. His name is going on the state compliance registry. He'll be unemployable in this field. I set down my coffee cup. So it's done. Essentially. The findings are public record this afternoon. Good. By noon, Lucas had left 4 voicemails. I deleted them without listening. Maribel posted something on social media about family betrayal and elder abuse. Nina sent me a screenshot. I glanced at it and deleted it. At 2, Meridian issued their statement. Translation: they threw Lucas under everything heavy and moved on. That afternoon, Lucas showed up at my house. 3rd time. When I opened the door, he looked destroyed. Unshaven, red eyes, same wrinkled clothes. Dad, can we talk? Please. I stepped back. Come in. We sat. Him on the couch. Me in my chair. They fired me, he said. My name is on a registry. I can't work in this field anymore. Everything's gone. Then you'll work in a different field. Why are you doing this? How could you destroy my life over one joke? It wasn't one joke, Lucas. It's been 2 years of your wife treating me like nothing, and you letting it happen. I'll talk to her. I'll make her stop. It's too late. When did you stop respecting me? I asked. He didn't answer. You built a career on my name. When someone disrespected that name in your home, you were silent. So I removed my name from the foundation. Everything built on it had to stand on its own, and it couldn't. You destroyed me. No. You destroyed yourself by building on someone else's foundation and treating them like they didn't matter. I just stopped holding up the structure. Without another word, he turned and walked out. I stood in the empty living room and waited to feel guilt or regret. Nothing came. The next 2 weeks passed quietly. Lucas didn't call. The family group chat went silent, then slowly resumed with innocuous messages. Nina checked in every few days. I settled back into normal routines. Elaine called once more. The appeals window closed. Meridian accepted the penalties. It's officially over. Good. No regrets? None? I found old photos while cleaning. Lucas as a baby, at graduation, standing with his mother. I looked at them briefly, then put them back in the box. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, Nina called. Lucas and Maribel are selling the house, moving somewhere cheaper. Lucas got a job doing general consulting, half the pay. Maribel's going back to work. They're struggling. That's not my responsibility. I know. I just wanted you to know. It doesn't change anything. That night I sat in the dark living room, the hearing aid picking up the sounds of the house settling. Lucas had been careless with me, with his work, with everything. Now he was learning what consequences meant. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel regret. I felt clear. 3 weeks later, I got a letter from the State Energy Oversight Commission thanking me for my service and professional integrity. I filed it away. That afternoon, I drove to the medical supply clinic parking lot and sat there thinking about clarity. How losing something, hearing, respect, illusions, sometimes meant gaining something else. Truth, precision. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Halden, this is Cambria Ortiz. I'm the new compliance director at Meridian. She offered me a consulting position, advisory role, good compensation. I thought about Lucas hearing I'd gone back to work with Meridian without him. No, I said. I'm retired, very retired. If Meridian wants to rebuild, you'll do it on your own merit. I hung up. That evening, Nina called. I saw Lucas at the grocery store. He asked about you. What did you tell him? That you seemed peaceful. Good. Will you ever forgive him? Maybe, but he needs to understand what he did first. Really understand it. Not just the incident, the pattern. That could take a long time. Then it takes a long time. We talked about other things, normal things. When we hung up, I felt at peace. 2 days later, I read the final compliance report. 63 pages. Lucas's name appeared 17 times. Each instance documented a failure, a shortcut, a compromise. That evening, Lucas sent one last text. Dad, I don't know if you'll read this, but I understand now what I did. Not just at Thanksgiving, but for years. I let Maribel treat you like you didn't matter. I stayed silent. I chose comfort over loyalty. I built my career on your reputation and acted like it didn't deserve protection. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I finally understand. I read it 3 times. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, to bridge the gap. But understanding was just the first step. Real change took time, I typed. I know. Sent? Then I set the phone down. The house was quiet. Everything was exactly as it should be. Clear, precise, complete. The systems had worked. The consequences had landed. The structure had held. And I had no regrets. 4 weeks after Thanksgiving, snow fell. I stood at the kitchen window watching it transform the neighborhood into something clean and new. At 3 p.m, my phone rang. Richard Voss from the State Energy Oversight Commission. Mr. Holden, following our interview last week, we'd like to offer you a position on our advisory board. Your expertise in identifying systemic failures before they become critical, that's what we need. I thought about it, about stepping back into that world, about having purpose again. When would it start? January, 2 meetings a month. Compensation is standard for advisory positions. Let me think about it. Of course, we'd be honored to have you. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table. The advisory position meant influence, respect, a chance to ensure the systems worked properly. At 6, there was a knock on my door. Lucas stood on the porch, covered in snow, but he looked different, cleaner, more present. Behind him, standing by the car, was Maribel. Dad, I know I should have called, but I needed to come in person. I looked past him at Maribel. She wasn't smiling that performative smile. She looked uncomfortable, genuine. We both needed to come, Lucas said. I stepped back. Come in. They came in, stamping snow off. We went to the living room. They sat on the couch together. I took my chair. Lucas looked at Maribel. She took a breath. Mr. Halden, I owe you an apology, a real one. Her voice was different, quieter. What I said at Thanksgiving was cruel. The way I've treated you for 2 years was cruel. I made you feel irrelevant and outdated, and I did it on purpose because I thought it made me seem more important. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I studied her, looking for performance, finding something else. Discomfort, maybe? Genuine regret. And, I said, and I've been treating Lucas the same way I treated you, making him smaller so I could feel bigger. He lost his job because of that, because I pushed him to cut corners, to take credit he hadn't earned, to prioritize appearance over substance. She looked at Lucas. I'm in therapy now, twice a week, working on it. Lucas spoke. Dad, I spent the last month really thinking about what you said, about when I stopped respecting you. I figured it out. It was gradual, but there was a moment, 3 years ago. Maribel made a joke about you being past your prime, and instead of defending you, I laughed. Because it was easier. Because I wanted her approval more than I wanted to be a good son. He leaned forward. After that, every time she said something dismissive about you, I stayed silent. Every time she treated your experience like it was worthless, I let it happen. I participated in erasing you, and I built my whole career on your name while doing it. I lost everything, he continued. My job, my reputation, my financial security. But the worst part was realizing that I deserved to lose it. Because I built it all on a foundation I didn't respect. Your foundation. I didn't say anything, just waited. I'm not here to ask you to fix it, Lucas said. I'm not here to ask for your endorsement back or your help getting another job. I'm here to tell you that I understand now, really understand, and I'm sorry for all of it. Maribel spoke again. We're moving next week. Smaller house. Both working jobs we never thought we'd have to work. Starting over completely. But we needed to come here first, to say this to your face. I looked at them, at Lucas, who finally seemed to see what he'd done, at Maribel, who'd lost the aggressive edge that had defined her. I appreciate you coming, I said. I appreciate the apology, both of you. Does that mean, Lucas started, it means I appreciate it. It doesn't mean everything's fixed. You spent 2 years participating in my erasure. That doesn't get undone in one conversation. I know, Lucas said quickly. I'm not asking for that. I just needed you to know that I finally see it. Good, that's a start. We sat in silence for a moment. Can I ask you something? Lucas said. When you withdrew your endorsement, did you know it would end like this? Did you know I'd lose everything? Yes. And you did it anyway? Yes. Because you needed to understand that choices have consequences. That you can't build on someone else's foundation and then treat that foundation like it doesn't matter. I spent 30 years building credibility. You traded on it. When someone disrespected it, you stayed silent, so I took it back. Lucas nodded slowly. It was the right thing to do. I hate that it happened, but it was right. That surprised me. You think so? I do now. A month ago, I thought you were vindictive. Now I understand you were just holding me accountable. Nobody else ever did that. Mom didn't, Maribel didn't, my bosses didn't. You were the only one who ever demanded that I actually earn what I had. Maribel stood. We should go. We just wanted to say this in person. Lucas stood too. Can I call you sometime? Not right away, but maybe in a few months? Just to talk? I thought about it. Yes, you can call. Thank you. They left. I watched them walk to their car through the snow, watched them drive away carefully on the slick roads. I closed the door and stood in the quiet house. The hearing aid picked up everything. The wind, the settling walls, my own breathing. Something had shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet. But the possibility of it. The foundation for something new. I walked to my office, opened the filing cabinet, pulled out the folder one last time, looked at the documents inside. The architecture of consequence that had brought us here. Then I closed the folder, put it back, and locked the drawer. I didn't need it anymore. The next morning, I called Richard Voss back. I'll take the advisory position. Excellent. We'll send the paperwork this week. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, looking out at the snow-covered street. Lucas had finally understood. Maribel was working on herself. They were rebuilding on their own foundation this time, and I had work to do again. Important work. Making sure the systems functioned properly, that accountability meant something, that consequences landed where they should. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. Thank you for seeing us. And Dad, I'm proud of what you did. It took courage. I hope someday I'll have that kind of courage. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back, You will. You're already starting to. I set the phone down and finished my coffee. The house was quiet. The world outside was white and clean and full of possibility. Everything was clear. For the first time in years, I felt complete. The consequence had served its purpose. The system had worked. Justice had been done. And now, finally, there was space for something new to begin. I smiled.